New Zealand, a nation ranked miles below Iran, walked into SoFi Stadium and left with a point at the World Cup. 8 shots on target, 2 goals. How did the All Whites pull this off? Welcome back to WorldGoals, the home of World Cup 2026 analysis. Iran versus New Zealand was supposed to be straightforward, a warm-up point for a confident Asian powerhouse. Instead, we got one of the most dramatic matchday one results of the entire tournament, 2-all, and the stats suggest New Zealand didn't just survive. They genuinely competed. We're breaking down exactly how and what it means for both teams going forward. Let's start with a number that should stop you in your tracks. Iran had 4 shots on target. New Zealand had 8. 8 at a World Cup, against a team with genuine tournament pedigree and a squad built for this stage. That is not a stat you associate with an underdog just hanging on for dear life. That is a team that came here with a plan and executed it. So what does that tell us tactically? It tells us Iran struggled to convert their pressure into clean, dangerous attempts. They were probably dominant in terms of the ball and territory for stretches of this match. That's what we'd expect from a side of their quality and organization. But quality of chances and quantity of possession are two very different things. Iran's 4 shots on target suggests their final third decision-making was off. Their buildup was being read, or New Zealand's defensive block was simply shutting down the most dangerous angles. Now flip it around. New Zealand generating 8 shots on target means they were not just sitting in 2 banks of 4 and praying. They were transitioning quickly. They were finding space in behind. They were making Iran's backline uncomfortable on the counter. That is a tactical identity, and it worked. 2 goals scored on the biggest stage in world football tells you those 8 attempts weren't lucky, hopeful strikes from distance. They were meaningful, threatening, dangerous. The story of this match, statistically, is that New Zealand were the more clinical side. And in football, clinical beats dominant every single time. Iran came into this match as the clear favorites. They've been a consistent force in Asian football for years. They qualified comfortably, and their squad has a blend of European-based quality and domestic experience that should be more than enough to handle New Zealand on matchday 1. So how do you explain a 2-2 draw and only 4 shots on target? The answer almost certainly lies in the press. New Zealand didn't sit off Iran and let them dictate. They pressed with energy and disrupted Iran's rhythm in the buildup. When you force a technically decent team into rush decisions higher up the pitch, you create exactly the kind of turnovers that fuel dangerous counterattacks. And that's the scenario Iran found themselves in repeatedly. Iran's midfield shape also comes under the microscope here. If you're only generating 4 shots on target with the level of individual quality in that squad, something is breaking down in the progression from midfield to attack. Either the wide channels weren't being exploited effectively, or the center forwards were being isolated, or New Zealand's defensive mid-screen was simply nullifying the creative passing lanes. Probably a combination of all 3. But here's what nobody noticed in real time. Iran actually had chances to win this match. 2 goals scored means they weren't completely toothless. The issue is they needed 4 to feel safe against a side playing on the counter, and they couldn't find a third. That speaks to a lack of composure in the final third and potentially some overconfidence in the early stages that allowed New Zealand to settle into the game and find their rhythm. For Iran, this is a massive wake-up call. They cannot afford to carry this sloppiness into the next round. The group will not be forgiving. Adjustments need to happen, and they need to happen fast. Let's give New Zealand the credit they absolutely deserve. Coming to SoFi Stadium, one of the most spectacular venues in world sport, with the weight of being heavy underdogs and producing a performance with 8 shots on target and 2 goals is a monumental achievement. This isn't luck. This is a team that has been built with a specific game plan, coached to understand their limitations and maximize their strengths, and mentally prepared to compete at this level. The All Whites have always been a nation that punches above their weight when they reach a World Cup. They're compact, physically combative, and dangerous on the transition. This result fits that identity perfectly, and crucially, they now have a point. 1 point on matchday 1, earned against one of the strongest sides in their group, changes everything about their tournament trajectory. Other teams watching from the group now know New Zealand cannot be taken lightly. That psychological shift is enormous. But here's the question that matters going forward. Can New Zealand maintain this level for the next 2 matches? The energy and intensity they brought to this performance is incredibly hard to sustain. The press, the running, the defensive discipline, all of it requires physical and mental freshness that will be tested. and their opponents in the coming matches will have watched this performance and taken notes. For Iran, the priority is simple. Fix the clinical problem, tighten up the defensive transitions, and do not let this result define their campaign. A draw is recoverable. 2 draws is a crisis. They need a response immediately. This was match day 1. The group is already alive, and New Zealand just lit the fire. So here's the debate. Is this New Zealand result one of the great match day 1 upsets of this World Cup? And can Iran get their campaign back on track before it's too late? Drop your take in the comments right now. I want to know who you think wins this group. If you enjoyed the breakdown, share it with a mate who watched this match and couldn't believe the scoreline. And subscribe to WorldGoals for daily World Cup 2026 analysis, tactical breakdowns, and previews every single day of the tournament.